Midweek Devotional. This week we're going to be looking at this past Sunday's message at Elevation Church, where Pastor Stephen Chandler preached a sermon about the battle made me. I'm going to be kind of giving you my notes on some of the key points.
By the way, be careful judging people for what they're battling. Do you really think they picked that fight? They didn't pick that fight picked them. They didn't pick addiction picked them. They didn't pick mental torment picked them. And hear me, just because the fight picks you does not mean you get to surrender. You have Almighty God on the inside of you. You've got to fight the fight that comes your way.
It's almost as if God is doing three things. He's affirming, he's encouraging, and he's teaching. So the first point that Pastor Stephen Chandler makes about the battle made me is that there are battles that will come looking for us. And this affirms our calling. If there are battles that come looking for us, it likely means that the enemy is plotting attacks to prevent us from moving forward. And we can be encouraged by these battles that come looking for us, especially the size of the battle that we face. The size of the battle speaks directly to the size of our potential. The teaching comes from 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 34, where David said, when there came a lion or a bear. David was a shepherd, and as he was looking over his sheep, there would sometimes come a lion and a bear, and he had to deal with them accordingly. And Pastor Stephen Chandler, he said about these battles that come against us, that they teach us new things about ourselves and about our faith that we may not have known before. It's sort of an exercise of our faith, if you will. And I kind of made the connection to Pokémon when it comes to the battles that come looking for us. Because if you've played Pokémon before, you would know that along your journey, there would be these trainers along the way that will challenge you to a battle. As you fight them and win, your Pokemon gain experience and they get stronger and they learn new moves. Very similar to our walk. As we encounter these battles that come against us, we have victory over them. We learn new things about ourselves. We learn new things about God. We get a testimony, a personal testimony from these battles that come against us when we have victory over them. We may see God in a new way as a provider. We may see God as being faithful. But we have that personal testimony that we now have in our back pocket. It's a move or a lesson that it's not so easy to forget. The second battle that he talks about are the battles that we go looking for. These battles affirm the direction that we are heading. See, as you say yes to God, you are going to have to confront some of the ugliness in your life, some of the lies that the enemy has placed over you. And as you say yes, you're going to have to deal with these accordingly. So they affirm that we are heading in the right direction. And we should be encouraged by that, right? Because if we're walking in the path that God has called us to, then all the promises of God are available to us. That alone is encouraging. But I want to encourage you further to say that the battles that we go looking for them because we walk in confidence. We walk in confidence in God's will because we know that we're aligned with Him. So we know that He'll give us strength and victory. And we can be confident as we approach those battles that all of God's promises are available to us because we're aligned with His will. The teaching of this comes from 1 Samuel chapter 21, verse 8, where David used a past battle weapon to fight his current battle. The past battle weapon was Goliath's sword. Goliath, the giant that David defeated in chapter 17. He used his sword as his battle weapon in chapter 21. And so, like I mentioned in the last point where we were going over how we learn new moves and we learn new things about God from the battles that come against us. So that is continuing to be proven through the battles that we go looking for, because we have to use those previous testimonies about God to help us fight the battles that we go looking for. And then we're more equipped to deal with things that we know we have to face, such as fear or anxiety or loneliness or discouragement. We have to fight those battles head on. I like to think about it as the battles that we go looking for directly relate to the things that we already know are in our lives, or the things that we already know attack us. The battles that come looking for us, we may not necessarily see it. It may be more of an external battle, something that may happen to us in our lives, versus the battles that we go looking for, something that we've been dealing with for a long time, something that we know already exists in our life. The final point that he makes is that running is not an option. And I mentioned this in the last video about Jeremiah, that we don't really have a choice when it comes to saying yes to God, unless you want to get swallowed by a whale. And this is just a confirmation that when God calls you to something, you don't really have a choice. Because think about what life is like outside of saying yes. I liken this once again to Pokemon, because when you are in a battle in Pokemon, you don't have the option to run from it. You have to win or lose. As believers, when we are faced with a battle, whether it's a battle that we go looking for or a battle that comes against us, we have to stand firm in it. We have to understand that running is not an option for us. God gives us promises about his strength, gives us promises about the victory. So I want us to make the decision right now to stand in strength and stand believing and trusting in God about the victory that he promises us. But it's a decision that we need to make today, to make it now. Something that we need to pray for today, that when these battles come against us, that we will not cower in fear, that we'll lean on him, and that God will send people in our lives to help us along so that we're not stumbling and falling. And the fact that running is not an option affirms that the enemy is still attacking us. If the enemy is attacking you, that is a good affirmation or confirmation that he sees something in your future that threatens his kingdom. Pastor Stephen Chandler put it this way: there will be opportunities in our future to diminish our calling. Well, that affirms that we are called. And if we're called, we have the promises of God to be grasped. See, the Bible is alive because Pastor Stephen Chandler uses the story of David to confirm what we were talking about in the last video I made about Jeremiah. The two Bible characters are completely different, but yet the story and the things that they go through are still applicable in the same way. The message is still the same, relating to the battles that we face in our life. We talked about opposition, or we used the word opposition when it came to talking about Jeremiah. But Pastor Stephen Chandler uses the word battles, and he lets us know essentially the same thing. And he's a great orator of the word, so I do recommend you go watch that sermon. If you want to have success in our spiritual life, we need to take these resources that God has given us, because he is speaking to us. This is confirmation that he's speaking to us, giving us the same message again twice in a week. So we need to open our ears to hear what God is saying. A lot of believers would say, I don't hear God's voice. How do you hear God's voice? I want to hear God's voice. Well, this is how you do it. You listen when he speaks through different orders of his word, giving you the same message. That's confirmation of God speaking.